watching East Tennessee's first and only year-round sports talk show on television. This is The Sports Source with your host, John Pennington.
Good Sunday morning and welcome into The Sports Source. Happy Mother's Day to everyone out there. Happy Mother's Day to my mom who's watching. I hope she's watching. If she's not, no Happy Mother's Day for you. We do have a quality show for you today. We got plenty to talk about. I think it's going to be interesting. We have football, basketball, you name it. We got it. Let's go ahead and dive right into this thing. It's brought to you, this first segment, by Phil Cobble, Fine Homes and Land. And Phil and his team do an outstanding job of promoting your home if you are looking to sell it. No one in the Knoxville MLS area can match the proven success, the experience, the professional service of Phil and his team. Take a look at this beautiful house right here in Farragut. It's within walking distance to the Turkey Creek shopping area. 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. You see the price there. It's a great deal, and they do a tremendous job. They'll help you get into that house lickety-split. Phil Cobble, Fine Homes and Land. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we've got coming up on today's show. Owning Memphis. There's always a lot of talk in Tennessee about Tennessee recruiting Memphis. Can Tennessee actually own that area? Comings and goings on the basketball roster continue. We'll run through those. Which coach, Mike Strange kind of touched on this in a column this week, we kind of expanded out. Which coach from Bruce Pearl through Michael White, who turned you down, to Rick Barnes, would have you feeling best about the state of Tennessee's basketball program on and off the court over the next 5 to 10 years? We'll discuss. ESPN's put out an idea of possibly losing divisions in SEC football. How would that look as a schedule? A little bit on softball, a little bit on baseball, a couple of whoopsie quotes this week, a little fun with Nike. We got a big show, and it's always brought to you with the guys right here. Jimmy Himes will be joining us in just a second, but Bob Hodge, freelance contributor to the Knoxville News Sentinel. Mike Strange, regular contributor to the Knoxville News Sentinel. Chuck Cavaleris, irregular contributor to SouthernGolfCentral.com and the magazine Southern Golf Central. All right, guys, touched on it there in the open. There's always a lot of talk about Memphis when it comes to Tennessee. This week in particular, Rick Barnes said he wants to play Memphis more often. We know why. He wants to get in there and get a toehold and get kids out of Memphis. People are wondering if Drew Richmond, the top prospect in the state that Tennessee just inked from out of Memphis, and Richmond thinks he can do it. Folks are wondering, can he be the beachhead that you can use to invade that area? But here's the thing. Memphis is so different. Memphis is so far away.
Yeah.
You can't ignore it. You have to try and get in there. But do Tennessee fans and media worry too much about Memphis? When you look at it, can Tennessee ever truly own that area?
No. No, I mean, and it's really, John, you touched on it. I mean, Ole Miss is right there, Arkansas, Mississippi State.
Missouri's close.
Yeah, so you can have more than a Toho. You can go there with name recognition. But if you're going to look for something to own, I would go towards the mid-state area in the near future with the prospects that are going to be there. Obviously, you can't ignore Memphis, but you want to have a strong presence there, but you'll never own it.
And you know, if you define own, if they've got, say, 5 big-time football prospects, I think if you can get 2 of those every year, like you did with this past season, I think that you're doing pretty well. But I agree with Chuck. No, I don't think you can own it for the exact reasons that you just stated. It's so far away. It's so different than what Knoxville is, what East Tennessee is. I mean, and face it, you got some kids that want to play more of they grew up in the city. They kind of want to be in that big city just a little bit. Now, that kind of precludes a lot of the SEC schools. But I just think that it is so different that you're not going to own it, but you need to be able to lease it.
Well, that's a good way of putting it. Mike, I think you look at East Tennessee, 90% of the people around here are Tennessee fans. You get to the mid-states, probably 80%. You get to West Tennessee, you got a lot of people in there that moved to Memphis that are graduates of Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Alabama, Auburn. I mean, you got them from all over. So I think, you know, are most of them probably Tennessee fans? Yeah, probably. I'd say it's more than 50%, but it's a much lower percentage than what you have elsewhere in the state.
I believe I've read that there are 7 campuses in the SEC closer to Memphis than the University of Tennessee Knoxville campus. So I want to see Tennessee play Memphis in football and basketball, and not just as a recruiting thing, just from a fan standpoint. Right. A college basketball season is so long, and you need things to pep up the regular season. And And Tennessee-Memphis is a game fans enjoy. And in football, you look at they've scheduled the next 3 years: Western Carolina, Indiana State, UMass. Why not Memphis?
Well, I agree. I mean, their argument would be the same thing for Memphis in basketball. You got more to lose. If you lose to Indiana State, that's embarrassing. You lose to Memphis, that could hurt your recruiting. But I agree with you. It's more interesting, certainly in basketball too, because the SEC, it's not the ACC. Tennessee Ole Miss doesn't resonate like, say, Duke Virginia will. For Duke Virginia, that might not mean tons to people outside of here, but that's a good rivalry between those two schools. You don't have those deep rivalries for Tennessee basketball. There's Tennessee Kentucky, there's Tennessee Vandy. Florida kind of built up in the last 10 years, but you need teams like that. However, I just from a recruiting standpoint, I don't know that you can ever own that area.
And I would think that Tennessee I don't think playing Memphis in football every year, although I do agree I'd rather have them than what you got on the schedule. But basketball to me seems just like the natural one that it should be every year. And
maybe even home and home every year.
But if you're Memphis,
that's what I was getting ready to say. If you could work it out, play them a couple of times.
But if you're Memphis, why would you do it? Because you've got all the. It's the same as you got all the prospects. Why let anyone else in? Josh Pastner, the coach out there, doesn't want to play Arkansas either. Mike Anderson wants in there. No. Ole Miss wants to go. No.
Here's what I tell Memphis: don't be scared. Come on out and play.
Well, let me show you something. Guys. This is why I'm talking about Memphis. Here's a 230-mile radius around Knoxville. That's as the crow flies. All right. Memphis, still way outside that radius. Cincinnati, Charlotte, Atlanta, Birmingham, all inside the radius. And then the next one, let's look at driving distances. 390 miles to Memphis driving. It's only 257 to Birmingham, 357 to both Indianapolis and Columbus, Ohio, 360 to Raleigh. You're closer to Charleston, South Carolina than you are Memphis.
Yeah, I had a former UT coach tell me one time in recruiting that it's actually closer from Bristol to Canada than it is from Bristol to Memphis. To put that in perspective on your driving distance.
Yeah, I think, and Bob,
and that's the reason they don't do very well for recruiting
in Canada.
I know you were talking to somebody this week about a South Carolina fan.
The big thing that the South Carolina fan was talking about, we were talking about Steve Spurrier. He's getting older, how long he's going to stay. The guy that I was talking to, this particular fan wants him to stay forever, and his reasoning was because Steve Spurrier keeps South Carolina players in South Carolina. And I think everybody who's a Tennessee fan or people who cover Tennessee realizes how many players Tennessee used to get from South Carolina. That doesn't happen anymore. And he said now you've got Clemson, South Carolina trying to get these guys, and he wants him to stay there forever. To me, that's a little bit of a different situation.
It's very different. That's the
Tennessee going to Memphis.
Yes,
though. I mean, it's not the exact same thing.
Yeah. So I know he asked you about is Butch Jones closing down the borders.
And
it's a different deal to close the borders in Tennessee.
I said that might as well be in a different state, a different area of the country. It is so different than East Tennessee, and that's what Tennessee's problem is. And the one thing about Tennessee playing Memphis in sports, basketball, football, does it help your recruiting? I just wonder, does being on television all the time just have the same sort of impact? If Tennessee doesn't play Memphis in football, do they lose anything? Or are those kids you're recruiting? Heck, you see Tennessee every week anyway. Yeah. So I just don't know. I want to see it from a fan standpoint.
I think coaches still look at it and say it's about, can mom and daddy come see you play your game, the majority of your games? And that's why the Pastners of the world are going to play it the old school way, and that is I don't want anybody else in here grabbing my kids. And the funny thing is, Memphis traditionally, I mean, under Calipari especially, his roster wasn't made up of that many Memphis kids. I mean, they recruit nationally, but they don't want you getting those Memphis guys. Anyway, I don't know that Tennessee can ever own Memphis. It's a huge focus. We talk about it every year. Is this going to be the guy that knocks open the door? Is this going to be? Are we going to be able to get in there in basketball? You know, you don't ignore it, but at the same time, I don't see you ever owning that West Tennessee area in terms of recruiting. When we come back, Jimmy Hyams joins us. We're going to talk about UT basketball next. We got UT football to come, a lot of more stuff down the road. We come back to all the comings and goings on the UT Hoops team. Going back on the Sports Source.
Quality, quick. Trust Fast Frame.